The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Great. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone on the call. My name is Nicole Horsford, Senior Manager of Member Services at the IAB, and excited about another really great turnout for today's webinar. Again, I think it really speaks and says a lot about the topic, which is cross-screen advertising. This is actually a topic the IAB has focused a lot of energy on, beginning with the cross-media optimization studies, abbreviated XMOS, of 2003 up until 2006, which had a significant effect on the mainstreaming of internet advertising. Another study conducted by the IAB was entitled The Multi-Screen Marketer. This study set out to explore modern viewing habits with an emphasis on the true multi-device user. And the goal was to discover the kinds of obstacles and opportunities that marketers are facing today from this really fundamental shift in how we watch and interact with media. And what we found is that multi-screen TV watchers aren't the future, they're actually the present. And I'm sure no surprise there to people on the call. You know, a lot of this activity can be attributed largely to the proliferation of device ownership today. Smartphones now make up slightly more than half of all mobile subscriptions, accounting for over 100 million Americans. And even bigger news, tablet adoption has been among the most rapid for any digital innovation. Various estimates place overall penetration between 20 and 25%, and twice that for households with annual income over $75,000. So, you know, for publishers, this means there's the possibility of creating experiences that are compelling and useful for consumers and powerful branding tools for advertisers. And that really means developing strategies that reflect how people want to get content and the devices they're using to get it. Content will increasingly be expected to have the qualities of being optimized, complementary, and transferable. So today's conversation will be all about cross-screen advertising and solutions as well to some of the challenges it poses today. So real quick before we begin, a couple housekeeping announcements. All participants are currently on mute, and we're going to be taking live questions throughout the webinar through your question feature, which you should see on the right-hand panel of your screen. Also, the webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted on IAB.net, and I'll send out a link to everyone on the call on how to access. And so now I'm going to turn over today's conversation to Matt Tengler, Senior Director of Product at Jumptap, who is going to begin with an overview on cross-screens and the challenges that we face today.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. And thanks, everyone, for joining the webinar today. What I want to do is start with a quick level set. I'm going to be talking a lot about, we're all going to be talking a lot about screens and channels, and I just want to give a quick explanation of what I mean when I say a screen or a channel. Because we're really looking at cross-screen, but also cross-channel advertising today. So when I say cross-screen, it's very simple. It's PC versus smartphone versus tablet. It's also TV, and it's also offline. And it's not really a screen, but it's an interaction point, and it's important for us to consider that in this conversation today. When I talk about channels, I mean things like owned versus search versus display versus social versus video. So as we go through this conversation, there's really a matrix here. There's display on PC, there's display on mobile, there's display on tablet. So that type of matrix is really what we're talking about addressing today. Just trying to, do I have control, Nicole, to change slides here?
You should, yes.
Does not, oh. There we go. Change the slide. Okay. Great, thanks. So I'm going to start, so the general question, okay, why does cross-screen and why does cross-channel matter? I'm going to go through a series of slides here with some great empirical data from a study that Google did in August 2012 related to cross-screen and cross-screen behavior. If you haven't read that study, I really encourage you to do that. It's really, it's interesting, and it also confirms in a lot of ways some of the anecdotal examples I think we all have around cross-screen usage. So the first point is that our media consumption today as consumers, 90% of it is happening via a screen. And over a third of that is happening via smartphones. So if you think about your own personal media consumption and compare it to what you were doing 1 or 2 years ago, I mean, I think all of us see this in our day-to-day lives now, especially the people on this call who are going to skew a little bit more technical. But I think this type of behavior, and I observe it in others outside the industry, where the quote-unquote normals are behaving this way as well, and that's really the problem opportunity that sits in front of us today. Then there's the movement and the accomplishment of a task across several screens. So again, great data from Google, empirical data from Google on this, how different activities are actually accomplished across several screens. I'm not going to read off the stats that they have. You can see them here, but I'm going to talk more about an anecdotal case on my side, where recently my wife and I were planning a vacation, and we followed these steps pretty much exactly, even before, unconsciously we're following these steps, where our upper funnel behavior, so researching where we want to go, where we want to stay, and going through that whole decisioning process actually happened on our smartphones and our tablets within the household, but the actual buying happened on the PC. So we were navigating across those screens to actually accomplish a single task. And we see that in our lives. And you can also see how that points to one of the challenges we'll discuss today, one of attribution, where the decisioning that we made and the input that we got and the influence we were given in that decision-making process happened in mobile, but the actual buy happened in PC. Then you have the shopping behavior and how access to shopping actually changes behavior. Again, great empirical data from Google. Let me talk about an anecdotal case of how this has actually impacted my life. So the Amazon, the smartphone app that I have on my Android device from Amazon, has really changed how, when, what, and why I buy from Amazon. There's examples in my day-to-day life where there's things that on a Wednesday I'll think of, I need to get X, Y, or Z. I'll do that this weekend when I'm out doing chores. But then I remember, well, I can get that product through Amazon. I won't have to remember to do it this weekend. So how I'm buying is changing to my smartphone. When I'm buying is at the moment the need arises. What I'm buying is changing because I typically buy things, those spontaneous buys are things that I probably would have bought through a retailer other than Amazon. And the reason I'm buying, the why I'm buying, has changed based on those other factors. So it's a huge opportunity, and really it's an opportunity to connect that and give me all the opportunities I need to interact with you as a commerce provider or you as an advertiser. So there was a good interview that a woman named Jonah Marcus did. She's the director of mobile and digital store marketing at Sephora, and she did an interview with Mobile Commerce Daily in January of this year talking about their holiday season. And a third of Sephora.com's traffic is coming from mobile today, well, where mobile is smartphone and tablet. But what I really liked was her quote here, and I'm actually going to go ahead and read it. Customers don't view mobile, tablets, web, and stores separately. They are ways for consumers to shop when and where they want. And that's really the overarching theme, is that this is how consumers are behaving. Whether, I don't think they consciously know it, but they're moving between these screens really seamlessly. And their expectation is that this is how we are going to behave, where we is the industry, and our message is going to move with them seamlessly across those channels. But then you come into the reality that what we're selling is, in the Google case, selling display on mobile or display online or search on mobile or search online. Well, they're, just like all the players in this space, they obviously have been thinking about this a lot. They've done a lot of research in the area, and they're starting to break down those barriers and kind of get to that unification that's really the focus of the conversation today. One example of something they're doing is the AdWords Enhanced campaigns, where they're not really connecting the user per se, but they're connecting the buying process across screens and simplifying the access to those screens and simplifying the decision-making and process on when and how to interact with that consumer. Then you have Facebook. Facebook, again, you can buy on the Facebook channel on mobile, the Facebook channel online, but it's still not a holistic conversation with that consumer. But they also are doing things to change that. And if you think about some of the functionality that the Facebook Exchange and some of the new announcements they made in the last week around data partnerships have allowed, and that's the ability to actually connect users on the own channel into the social channel. So those conversations, that data, those learnings, those insights can actually flow from the own channel into the social channel and start to create a more holistic view and a more holistic conversation with that consumer. Then, of course, Jumptap. We look at advertising. We talk about display on mobile, whether that's a tablet or smartphone. We're also evolving our way of thinking around advertising and really moving to a more user-centric model. Through our partnership with 24/7, what we've done is we've connected users across the mobile and PC space. So there's many different players in the ecosystem now, all starting to move down this path of connecting the user experience, and we're all doing it through different connections within that big matrix that we started off with many channels and many screens. So the punchline, consumers expect a holistic, unified message from the advertiser, but what we, as an industry, have allowed the advertiser to do is really deliver sporadic, not connected messages across those screens and across those channels. And there's good reason for that. It's a very hard problem to solve. So if you think about some of the challenges, and this is by no means a comprehensive list, but these are some of the major challenges that sit in front of us as an industry to accomplish this. There's a lot of walled gardens out there. And what I mean is there's large amounts of data that exist in areas where it can't be or it can't easily be accessed in its full detail, whether that's impression data from search or impression data from social or offline data. Whatever the case may be, there's these huge chunks of information that are required to build that complete view of the user experience that aren't really accessible today. Then you have funnel specialization, where there's different players, different technology providers, different media companies that focus on different parts of the funnel, whether it's display remarketing, search, brand, that they're taking, and that's because it is a complicated thing, and that there's specialization within areas of the funnel. But those two items really lead to the third problem of fragmented data, that the interactions and the information about all these touch points with that particular consumer and the learnings that can result from it are scattered around the ecosystem. You layer on top of that the different standards across screens in the sense that they're not consistent, they're not portable. If you look at just the case of user identification, cookies is the primary online, whereas in mobile it's a mix of different approaches, where on TV it's to be determined. You look at creative, it's not consistent across these channels. So there's a huge problem around data fragmentation and then the standards on which that data relies. And that gets to the root problem or the root opportunity of reassociating all this data and taking these fragmented data sets and these fragmented views and reassociating them so that you can get to a holistic view of that user. So there's different ways to solve those broad problems. One way to solve that problem is to get more people into your world, if you will, or more people under your umbrella. So if you look at the large players out there today, speaking broadly, one of the strategies they seem to be pursuing is bringing more of those interactions across channels and across screens into their world, under their umbrella. And this is a quick kind of summary of Google, Apple, Facebook from my perspective, where they're strong and where they have emerging opportunity today. The green items are kind of core, strong assets for the company, and the gray items are emerging assets in the company. And you can see how there's some competition there to get access into each other's areas so that you can have purview into the entire consumer experience within your umbrella or under your umbrella. Now, there's a question, a valid question of, will any one company have a critical mass of user interactions across the screens and across the channels such that they can kind of solve this problem? The question really is, will one garden ever be big enough? And our view as a network at the end of the day, and someone who connects things together, is that no, there's never going to be one source that is that large and that dominant. So as a network, what we need to do is evolve. And we have to stop thinking about ourselves, and we have stopped thinking about ourselves as an advertising network, and think more about ourselves as a user network that makes buying across channels easy, makes optimizing the entire funnel and attributing correctly down the entire funnel a possibility, that we centralize the data and the information and the learnings that come from that data, that we simplify the buying process such that we are helping figure out what's the right message to deliver when, on what screen, and how, and ultimately that we're accomplishing that ultimate goal of connecting user experiences and getting away from that kind of a personality disorder on the behalf of the advertiser, where they're having multiple conversations with the consumer, and get them into one holistic conversation with that consumer. So I'm going to stop there, hand it over to Matt Gay from Operative to continue the conversation.
Thanks, Matt. That was a great setup, and I sort of experienced that personally as well. You put some personal anecdotes in there, and when you sit back and you think about it, that's really becoming, the way it is truly evolving about the way we are all interacting, with the internet and with the web. I'm doing a lot more, purchasing on mobile. Mobile advertising is beginning to evolve in the tablet, and it's interesting how the tablet and the smartphone and the desktop are all sort of beginning to find their niche in terms of how consumers interact. So now what I'd like to do is have a little discussion between Matt T and I, just about how Jumptap is actually solving some of these problems, because they certainly are problems or opportunities depending on the way you want to look at it. And I think the first thing I wanted to talk about was some of the standards. I know the IAB is doing a lot of great work in this area, as well as ComScore has come out with a standard, as well as Nielsen for managing cross screens. And I guess the first question is, Matt, are you guys using any of these measurement standards that are out there? They haven't been out there that long, maybe towards the end of last year, but I was just wondering whether you guys are sort of taking advantage of any of these yet.
Sure, we're in early stages with these. Really, it's supporting learnings at this point across some of these, where with ComScore specifically, working with them to get their mobile tracking and their mobile insights up to speed, and helping them navigate the challenges that anyone who works in mobile went through over the period of the last couple of years of figuring out the ecosystem, what type of tracking works, and in a lot of ways answering that question of how it's different from online and what works in mobile versus online. So we are, we're participants in that, and we're supportive of these initiatives. And when you look at mobile, we are a mobile audience platform at the end of the day. One of our goals is to create standards in mobile that are portable into the online world, so that people can connect these worlds using common metrics. So I think that's one of the things that we should have called out here in the deck, is that there's a language and a measurement gap here between the screens as well, that the things people talk about on TV versus mobile versus online and the way they measure media isn't in sync yet. So we really need to drive that opportunity as well.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Nicole, I don't know if we have the poll function working, but it would be great if we could get up a poll to ask everybody else, whether they're using, any of the, Comscore, Nielsen, neither, or both. So let's talk a little bit more about just the operational challenges of, on the publisher side, Matt, in terms of actually delivering some of these experiences and some of these ads. So when I was at Martha Stewart, I ran ad operations at Martha Stewart. It was a little ahead of the mobile revolution or evolution, depending on how you look at it. But we were starting to take a look at not only just across digital mediums, the tablet was just coming out in the smartphone, but also around television as well. So we had rate card issues between the different mediums. We had packaging. How do you package things across the different mediums, and then how do you reconcile, right? So not just even across, but even within the medium, how you reconcile. So one of the challenges that you talked about before a little bit was just some of the friction in making all this happen. Can you maybe talk through a little bit of how you guys operationally are dealing with the the friction of serving ads and just managing the ad business on these different platforms?
Sure, and I think so. One, it's not perfect yet. There's both. It's an auto manual process at this point. Is the reality of it. There's a lot of technology that make it happen, but there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that also go into this because it's new. I think one of the changes, or one of the kind of evolving opportunities in the market that's going to make this a reality and take some of the friction out of the process is really programmatic buying. And programmatic buying is being the linchpin for someone like us to operate across all these different channels, all these different screens in a realistic way, right? Because it's not, I don't have to schedule certain things in certain ways with different places. I can have the machines, if you will, do the buying, and we can create and kind of extract a lot of the manual process through programmatic buying. So I think that's, as we talk about within Jumptap, the strategy and what we want to do in cross-screen, we also have to break it down a level of, okay, how are we going to make these things a reality? How are we going to scale the business? And the ability to do programmatic buying is one of those things that we identified as a critical point. There's other technology challenges to address some of the things you laid out there, Matt. How do you reconcile and demonstrate back to the advertiser that they're actually benefiting from the buy across screens? And this gets into one of the points that when we're out in market we're talking about a lot is it's different to buy, to have a single buy, right? That is, you can come to one source, you can buy PC and you can buy mobile, or you can buy mobile and you can buy display and you can buy social, whatever the case may be. That's just unification of the buying process. Really, what we're trying to get to is a unification of the user. Of course, doing it in a privacy-friendly way, and I think privacy is something we can evolve this conversation into as well and talk a little bit about the privacy here. But not just making that buying process easy, but actually letting the advertiser buy users who we know are active across those channels or across those screens, and then giving them the reporting that shows that, and then providing the insights and measurement that demonstrate the value of those connections across the screens.
Got it. That leads to another question. So you talked a little bit about innovation there. So what are you seeing in terms of innovation around creative? Creative matters, right? And every once in a while people get on the kick about creative, and is it creative? Is it the buying? What actually is making the user convert? So as like when we started out online, right, people took magazine ads and stuck them in banners. And then people took commercials, as it were, and made them pre-roll. And in the beginning, I think mobile was kind of the same way, right? People were taking the banner ads and trying to jam them on a smartphone. What kind of innovation are you guys seeing from advertisers and agencies in terms of some of the different creative that they're providing to for their clients to you guys, for example?
Sure. I think there's two aspects to that. One is just kind of the mobile specific aspect, and that rich media. If interaction with the advertiser is the goal of that piece of advertising, rich media is a huge opportunity where the entire interaction, the delivery of the brand experience, or even the capture of that user's information, interaction, even potentially in the future the buying, can all happen within that rich media ad unit itself. And just because of the nature of the mobile device, that's just a much more friendly experience where I don't necessarily have to leave my gaming experience, if I'm playing Angry Birds, to actually interact with the advertising, accomplish a goal, and then return back to the gaming experience or whatever experience I'm having on that device at that given time. So it takes something which can be a little bit jarring today and makes it much more seamless. The other aspect of that is, okay, now you're starting to do things cross-channel and cross-screen. How can I start to tie together the creative to maximize that opportunity? And that's right. Where I'd say that's the stage of the market we're in today. Is we're asking those questions of ourselves. Our advertisers, we're discussing those opportunities with our advertisers. What's the right way to? Is it just consistency of the creative, or do you really want to encourage different actions on different devices at different times? Where, one example we talk about is use the smartphone as a way to introduce and seed the idea, that, hey, you should really think about a Toyota Prius, but then use the tablet or the PC to drive the conversion event of, hey, go build your Prius right now on Toyota.com.
So is mobile, is measurement, that's actually perfect, because the next question I was going to ask you around, are we measuring mobile differently, or are we still on the, the CPM, CPC, CPA? And based on what you just said, do you think mobile will ultimately evolve to become, a real sort of, direct response medium?
Yeah, so I think mobile absolutely can be a direct response medium, both native mobile and the ability for mobile to impact direct response through other channels. And that's one of the really interesting things, and really one of the main benefits that I think advertisers can get out of this, or will get out of this growth and these connections across channels and screens, is that one of the hardest problems in the space is attribution and figuring out what's working where, when, and why. And part of the attribution challenge is that you may have 5 different channels and 5 different screens touching that user, all claiming all or some of that value. Now, if you can centralize all of that, you can actually get to more specific answers around that. And we, as a mobile advertising company, can start to demonstrate the value that we're creating, even if that value is being created on PC, for example.
Gotcha. Can you, at a sort of at a high level, without revealing anything sort of sensitive, can you talk about some of the value or some of the success that you guys have had with some different advertisers in terms of what some of their goals or expectations were?
Sure. I mean, I think that there's different answers to that. I think the biggest success we've seen, so part of what we do and part of our differentiation is around targeting and trying to make mobile targeting as good and better than what you can do online. That includes the inclusion of third-party data. So a lot of our success stories are around getting advertisers in front of their targeted users at scale in mobile, and then being able to actually demonstrate back to the advertiser with something more than a click-through rate. Anyone who's done anything in mobile knows that a lot of the post-click, we all want it to be there, but click-through rate is a metric that a lot of people in the industry fall back on, and helping people get beyond that and showing that, you know what, for this particular campaign, maybe your click-through rate is actually a little bit lower than this control over here, but the users we delivered based on that targeting actually were much more qualified users. And then tying them into the downstream or even offline attribution process. We do a lot of work on the auto side, and some of our best stories are around the usage of third-party data and then looking at how those users behave not so much on the mobile channel, but offline, and what are we actually driving far down funnel for those auto manufacturers.
How about video versus display on mobile? Are you seeing any trends or more effective or less effective? People watching more video on tablets and smartphones? Are they watching about the same as they were on the desktop? Are they more engaged, less engaged when they're watching video versus seeing some sort of text or banner ad on the phone or tablet?
Yeah, I mean, so we certainly see. So let me talk about a couple of things there and tie it back a little bit to the cross-screen opportunity. So one of the biggest things we see on video are people or advertisers or agencies who come to us and say, I have this video asset. I run it on TV. I run it online. I know it works for me. I want to run it in mobile. And then being able to make that easy for the advertisers so that they're running something that they know and are comfortable with across all the screens and all the channels. And that's certainly something we've seen a high amount of demand for. As far as interaction rates, I mean, I think it really depends on, just like anything, it's the creative and the quality of the targeting that you're delivering. We can see rich media video or pre-roll video. We see fantastic engagement rates when the content is of high quality. But not every story is a success story there, but I think most of them are, as long as you're focused on delivering creative that's relevant to the audience, but also kind of the right size, meaning it can't be it's got to be a snippet of information to that user. And then also, when you talk about interaction, the timing of the delivery is important in mobile, right? You're going to see different interaction rates, morning, noon, evening, night. And that was one of the things that we help our advertisers optimize is when you can actually get that interaction based on, is that person on their smartphone and their tablet for urgent reasons, or are they kicked back and absorbing media at that point?
Gotcha. And how are you guys doing it yourself, or are you? Or, and this is one of the questions from from the audience, which is around attribution. So how are you guys attributing things seen on the network or online with offline purchases? Are you using like Targus Info or Correlate, or do you have your own way of doing it, or are you even doing it, or are people asking for that yet?
Yep, there's certainly a demand for it. We do that through partnerships currently with Datalogics and emerging partnership with other providers in the space that have access to that type of information. But Datalogics has an interesting view of offline purchase behavior, and we're working with them to deliver offline studies. There's also, in some cases, there's the auto manufacturer case I talked about. They have their own types of ways of tracking this through the funnel, and we work with those cases as well. But that connection of measurement is just hugely important. It's more important in mobile. It was always important in PC, right? But on the PC side, there's a reasonable number of the ultimate value creation events still happening through the PC channel. In mobile, unless it's an app, a lot of the value creation, the actual value event, happens off the smartphone. And it could happen on the tablet, could happen on the PC, it could happen offline. So those connections are really important to our industry, and I think why you see people in mobile, one of the reasons why you see people in mobile pushing so hard and so fast on building these cross-screen and cross-channel connections.
So let's talk about money for a minute. Everybody's interested in money. And this is another question from the group. What are you seeing in terms of even across the industry about advertisers' willingness to spend more marketing dollars in digital, in your particular case, mobile and in tablets? Like, are you seeing people start to trust the environment, right? Because that was, it's still going on, and it still kind of amazes me a little bit. But digital is still not considered a quote unquote trusted environment for a variety of reasons, and we can certainly debate that. And there's been a lot of evidence to say that marketers are concerned about putting, more and more of their dollars, into digital and certainly into, mobile and tablets. But, what are you reading? What are you seeing in terms of, some of these marketing dollars starting to flow more into this space?
Sure. We're lucky to be in front of a lot of this, and we see we're in an interesting phase right now where we see advertisers and agencies who run the entire spectrum. We see people and advertisers who say, I know my consumers are spending almost all of their time in mobile, and if I do only offline or if I only do PC, they're a ghost to me. I'm never going to get in front of them, and I have to go all in on mobile. We have the people who are at the opposite end. I want to do a 25K test buy in mobile to do some learnings and figure out what this new mobile thing is all about. And then you have kind of the middle market. You definitely see, all the headline numbers. You see people pushing towards the, hey, I know my audience is there and I have to go interact with them. I think some of the people, there's a large group of people now who want to be on the all-in side, but there's market-related factors that are prohibiting them from moving there, as far as maybe the level of targeting that is available, the level of measurement, the level of insights, the level of controls that are there. And that goes back to some of your, I think, distrust. So the more that we can do as an industry to kind of provide or kind of break down some of those barriers, there's a glut of demand that wants to get through, but we're waiting for some of those things to go away before they jump into that camp of, hey, I know my consumer is there and I have to be there.
So let's go with that question a little bit more. Another question from the group was, in whether you have insight into this or not, but which budget is this coming out of? Is this coming out of the digital budget? Is this coming out of the television budget? Is there a mobile budget yet? A tablet budget yet, or no smartphone budget yet?
Yeah, there's certainly mobile budgets out there. As far as mobile versus digital versus television, they're the smallest of the three budgets, and that's a kind of a practical reality. So there are certainly dedicated mobile budgets, but the more we can do to link those screens, the more access we get to those other budgets. I mean, just to be frank, as a business, that's really the opportunity. And the more we can make mobile feel like online, the better we're going to be because we get access to those bigger budgets. But I think that breakout of, is there a mobile-only budget, how big is that mobile budget, really falls in line with the kind of the previous point of where is that advertiser on the adoption curve, or how urgent is it? I mean, sometimes we've seen advertisers who are in mobile not because they've made a proactive choice to get there, but because they've made a reactive choice to get there because they've seen their consumers go away from other channels, and that mobile is where they are now. So there's some of that reactive nature happening as well.
And that's actually a really good point. And every time I ask agencies this question, I get the same answer, and it's the right answer if that's the way it all gets executed. But they say the answer is about whether a campaign works or what should the goals be of the campaign. How should we measure, really? It's how should we measure and what should the goals be? And the answer is that whatever the advertiser's ultimate goals are. And I say that because I think oftentimes we do get hung up in terms of the medium. Is it a mobile budget? Is it a this budget? Is it a that budget? At the end of the day, it depends on how, where the consumer is and what the goals of the campaign are. I mean, who really cares at the end of the day, where they are, as long as they are doing whatever action, we want them to do. Now, that obviously makes reacting, which means you're in a reactive world to some degree when it comes, to marketing, but you have to follow the user at the end of the day because they're the ones, that are making all this happen. So, you mentioned programmatic before. How, do you think we're there yet in terms of, mobile programmatic, or are we still in the early stages of that?
Not early middle stages. I think so. Mobile, it's going to evolve with the same shape curve, I think, as online, but with a more condensed time period, right? I mean, it's proved itself out. There's more. You don't necessarily need to understand, rebuild all the systems and thinking, it's there. So it's not it's a warm start in mobile, as opposed to a cold start that it was online. So you're just going to see acceleration. But we've placed real bets on it being the right decision and have invested heavily in it. And one, because I think it's a huge opportunity in mobile. Part of that is because of how the type of inventory you get access to through programmatic buying in mobile is a little bit different than online. There's just better opportunities there. But also the point I raised earlier is that a good programmatic buying platform can be the foundation to connect all these screens and channels together.
Okay. We have a couple more questions about engagement. So, what are some of the metrics that you've seen or that your advertisers are asking for? Is it time spent? Is it clicks? Is it conversions? Like, what are some of the what are the sort of the top 3 metrics maybe that you've seen or trends over the past 6 months?
Yep. So we certainly, click-through rate is the old standard, one that we and I think everyone in the industry is trying to evolve off of. But we certainly see that. We're seeing much more sophistication now around the post-click activity. So is it, whether it's, there's always been there on the app side, the app driving someone to download an app. That conversion tracking process is fairly mature in mobile, but we're starting to see that level of sophistication emerge on the e-commerce side, where the same type of funnel analysis, the same type of conversion tracking, same type of lifetime value tracking that e-commerce companies are doing, they're now trying to do in mobile. On the app side, you see a movement away from pure CPA, CPI type models into a thinking about, okay, not how much am I paying to acquire this user, but how much am I acquiring to pay, how much am I paying to acquire a user of this quality? So it's getting into more of a true kind of return on ad spend or ROI type model on the app side. And then the other measurement metric that we're really starting to see a lot of is connect the screens for me. I know that the stuff that we're doing in mobile is having an impact on PC. I anecdotally can see it. I can see it through when I'm running mobile. I see different things on my PC conversions, but connect them for me. Make it concrete so that I can go to my advertiser or my boss and say, look at this impact that mobile's having.
So along those lines, one of the another question that somebody had was, how do you, in terms of purchases, right? How do you attribute, the offline purchase to, advertising on a mobile device?
Yeah. So the offline is done through it's exposed versus unexposed type study. That this is something that we partner with Datalogix for. Datalogix does this online. They're also they're able to do it in mobile now through our partnership. And really, it's study based, where people exposed to this type of advertising or exposed at this rate or exposed to this particular type of creative behave differently offline when normalized for normal offline behavior, right? Did I sell more of X, Y, or Z? So it's the same methodology, the same standards that are used by DLX Online, just ported over to mobile, where the challenge that had to be solved in mobile was getting the Datalogix targeting and data segments reassociated at the right level of granularity because of the lack of cookies in mobile. So that technology problem had to be solved before the solution became portable from online into mobile. Okay.
All right. And then one last question from the group, unless anybody has any more. But and the question is, does size matter? How does scale, impact, the results? Or how have you seen, campaigns, at a smaller scale versus maybe a similar campaign at a larger scale, and how much of the effectiveness would you contribute to, scale versus, all other things being equal?
Yeah, I mean, that's, we believe that, and we've made investments to kind of support scale. Scale is important. One, if you just look at the Datalogix example, you need to have a scale to actually be able to run studies like this. So from a purely mathematical, statistical, getting to something useful point of view, scale matters. The other point that we try to make around scale is that some of these more leading edge initiatives have overhead and costs associated with them, and they require a little bit more thinking and a little bit more moving. And you don't want to put all this effort in and just reach a small section of the market. So being able to reach that scale is really important to driving true results for the advertiser. And the last piece I'll add to that is if you start to connect users across screens or across channels, really what's interesting to us is the union, right? It's what's the overlap between those users across the screens or across the channels. And if you bring in more screens and more channels, you want to maximize that union, that overlap. And without scale, the chances of overlap are much smaller. So really being able to reach the full footprint, whether it's on the PC or mobile, is really something that's critical.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you for your candid and detailed responses. That was great, Matt. Thank you. So I'll turn it over back to you, and then you can wrap it up, and then I think Nicole will close.
Yeah. So Matt, thanks for taking us through that. I hope the audience found that useful and interesting. I think we still have 10 more minutes here. So Nicole, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to you at this point. If there's questions from the audience, I'm sure Matt or myself would be happy to go through those at this point.
Sure, thank you, and thank you both, Matt, for a really great discussion. I think Matt Gay did a great job of going through all the questions from the audience. Maybe I'll just give it another minute. If anybody else has questions, please utilize your question feature to type it in. But while we're waiting, just to let everybody know, this discussion was recorded. So if you want to access it, it can be available on IAB.net Interactive Insights webinars. And as a follow-up to this discussion, I'm going to send everybody an email with a quick poll on a couple of questions and challenges that were brought up today. A lot around measurement, who's possibly working with Nielsen and ComScore, and it would be great if you guys could just answer those and get it back to me. But yes, I think that's about it. Questions. So everybody has 10 minutes of their life back today, which should be good news. And again, if you want to access the recording, IAB.net. And thank you again to Matt Gay at Operative and Matt Tengler at Jumptap for the discussion.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, all.
All right. Bye.